Hello everybody, Heckendoc coming to you with another MegaMek tutorial. So last time we talked about how to set up a game against the bot and then how to add your units, how to change your pilots and do all those things. Very basic stuff, but at least gets you into a game. Now we are in that game. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the client settings where you can change how things look. You can change what kind of display you have, as well as provide some additional information for you while you're playing the game. As soon as you load it in from the lobby, this is what you're going to see, roughly, give or take just a little bit. I do have a couple of options that I have changed already, but I will go through and I will tell you exactly what I've already changed. And you can see it on your end as well. I'm going to go through all the client options and all the view options that are available to you. And at the very end, I'm going to go through how I set up my client for when I am playing. So let's go ahead and jump on in. The first thing that we need to do is go into the options that allow us to change how things are displayed for MegaMek. And the way that we do that is you either go to View, Client Settings, or you can press Alt-C, and that pulls up your client settings. At first, this can seem very overwhelming because of how much information there is, but bear with me. It's not as bad as what you think it is, and you don't have to change very much most of the time. However, you can tweak some things here and there to make it work a little bit more for you. So the very first tab that we have is the main tab. This is primarily administrative things. So broad overview, display settings, color settings for text, also some kind of development and bug finding things like keeping a log, things along those lines, adding date timestamps. Nothing crazy. And for the vast majority of people, you don't need to change anything at all in this tab. Next up, the audio tab, pretty self-explanatory. This is where you have a lot of different, or the three primary sounds that can play. All of them play the same .wav file. Please note that normally turn notification sounds are on by default. We'll come back to that. Next tab, key bindings. Again, fairly self-explanatory. You can come through, you can change some of the key bindings. However, you cannot change all of them. And honestly, there are so many key bindings and so many different options. I don't recommend that you change very much, and instead you just kind of learn what there is first, and then you can find out what you're using the most and if you need to change something at that point in time. Next tab is the game board. So this is probably the one that we're going to end up talking about the most. Game board is what provides you with the information on, number one, the tile set that's being used. So this can change what all of your tiles are looking like, how they are displayed. Do they look a little bit more older or classic? Like, how do they look? It also gives you all of the settings for the different nags. So you get, every time you get a little pop-up that says, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? This is where you can honestly turn them off. The vast majority of the time, you don't want to turn them off because they're going to save you from doing something very stupid. And MegaMek does not have an undo button. So think carefully before you do things. Going on down, there are some display settings such as how many buttons per row at the very bottom are there. Things along those lines. Does the mouse wheel zoom the map? So on and so forth. Going on down, you also have unit labels. So we're not going to go too in depth on unit labels today. Actually, we're not going to talk about them really at all. I'm going to have another video in the future where I talk pretty much only about unit labels and all of the information that is located on the board when you are looking at one of your mechs on the board. There's a lot of information in one little hex. It can get overwhelming. Keeping on going, this is where a lot of your, for lack of a better term, your graphic settings are. So are movements animated? Are we showing Rex? Are we using high quality graphics? Things along those lines. There's not a lot that you can change, but there's a little bit. And so you can change some of it. And then it also is where all the colors for onboard information is located. So for example, if you are highlighting where you can move, you can change what color walking is, or the highlighted hexes for walking. What color does it highlight for running? What color does it highlight for jumping? So on and so forth. And also, what color are all of your fields of fire? You can change all of that. Then at the very bottom, you have two options. One is for highlighting hexes inside the field of view, and another one is for darkening hexes outside the field of view. We're going to come back to this a little bit later in the video, and we're going to show you exactly what this means. But this is a setting that I think a lot of people are missing or don't realize that is even available, and so we're going to spend a little bit of time with it at the end. Unit tooltip, honestly, you don't have to worry too much about this. This is dealing with the information that is located on the unit panel, as well as if you are highlighting for a tooltip on the board, you can change what the background color is and things like that. I wouldn't mess with it too much, but you do you. Most things are pretty well set up. Minimap, you can change some of the information that is displayed on the minimap. You can also change what kind of symbols you're using on the minimap. Overall, again, I wouldn't change a whole lot. You can go through and look at these options. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is if you have questions about any of these options, most of them have an associated tooltip that pops up after you sit there and hover over the option for a moment. Next tab is the report tab. The main things that you can change here are what colors things are displayed in the report when it comes up. So this is for the end of phase report. Every time that you finish up a phase, if something happens, so you finish your weapons fire phase and you get a report at the end of it that says everything that happened. You do your physical attack phase, you get a report that pops up that says everything that happened. You can change some of those colors that are in that report, but not a lot. Overlays, honestly, I don't do anything here. I don't know very much about this. I just leave it alone. You're just changing the transparency of a lot of the overlays of tooltips, things like that, if you want to. I wouldn't. Button order. There are a ton of options for every single phase. You can change the order that these buttons appear in. Now, you're not going to see all of these buttons every single time you're in a unit because not all units need these things. Based on what kind of a unit you have, it will display different buttons. However, if you find that you're doing an action more often than something that's a little bit higher up on the list, you can change the order of the list and move it up in precedence. Overall, though, just leave it alone. Keep on going. Auto display. So there are different informational pop-ups that can appear during different times. So you'll see here that you have a report phase and a non-report phase. Report phase is any time that the round report pops up or the phase report pops up. Non-report phases, this is any time where you're actively playing. Are you moving mechs around on the map? Are you shooting at other mechs? Then that is a non-report phase. So unit display, you'll have this unit display over here that you can see. It might get hidden, it might get shown, normal stuff. The mini map, which you'll see in a minute, trying to say when to hide and show, round report, player list, so on and so forth. I'll let you kind of take a look at this as well. The AI tab, honestly, don't have to worry about this too much. You can, by default, this is not checked. That just is one additional setting, but for most people, you can leave everything alone. There's not a whole lot to change here. And then advanced settings, these are niche settings that the vast majority of people shouldn't have to worry about. So as you can see, really, you don't have to mess with too much here. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other options that are available to us. We're going to go ahead and hit done. Let's move the mini map just so that we can kind of get started here. So we already, looking at the view tab, we've got Client settings, which we've already gone through. We can increase and decrease the GUI size. So if you are a little bit harder with your hard off on your eyesight or anything like that, you can increase the GUI size, increase the size of the font and everything else to make it a little bit easier for you to see. So unit display, that is all of the information on the side panel that is right there. Minimap, self-explanatory. It's for the minimap. Round report, that is what was just popping up. So for every single phase that something happens, you're going to get a report and it's going to tell you what happened. It's going to show you the rules. It's going to tell you what all is going on. Force display, it just shows you all of the different forces there. Honestly, I never use this, but it's good information to know. And the nice thing is that it can show you a lot of good information up front that you might not know about otherwise. Bot commands, this will be important for later. We'll go over it later. Keyboard shortcuts. So over here, you'll see an overlay that has all of your keyboard shortcuts, and this overlay changes depending on what phase you're in. So if you are in the movement phase, you will see all the pertinent keyboard shortcuts for the movement phase. If you're in the weapons fire phase, same thing. You'll see all the pertinent keyboard shortcuts. You can disable this, but I would definitely have it, on your quick dial list for while you're getting started, because your keyboard shortcuts can make things go so much easier and it can make things feel a lot better and a lot smoother. We're going to turn it off for right now, though. The next one is the planetary conditions tab. Right now, planetary conditions, totally fine. If you're playing out of Mech HQ, though, there are often times where you can find that your planetary conditions are less than ideal, and it can be very nice to know what your planetary conditions are before you have your infantry step out of that APC and then they freeze to death because it's minus 70 degrees outside. We'll go ahead and turn that off for right now, though. Otherwise, you can zoom in and out. By default, using your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out. One note is that if you're playing on a laptop on a trackpad, trackpads and Java don't play well together if you're trying to zoom. So I don't recommend necessarily using your trackpad to zoom in and out, but instead using the plus and minus keys. The toggle overview zoom, if you just press Z, gets you to a bird's eye view of the entire map so you can kind of see what's going on. By default, the map will not have an isometric view. So it'll look like a classic BattleTech map. You'll see all of your levels. It'll have a little bit of shading to make it a little easier to see what is where. However, you can enable an isometric view, which just helps pop things out a little bit more to make it easier to visualize. Hex coordinates, self-explanatory. Coordinates on the hexes so you can know what's going on. The change unit label display. So let's go ahead and put a couple of things on the board so we can demonstrate what this is. So when we're looking at our units, you can see that we've got a Jenner, Archer, Awesome, and a Clint. Now, if we press Control B, which is the same as clicking the change unit label display, we can change how the labels for each of these units is displayed. So we can change it to only pilot or unit nickname. We can change it to no labels, change it to chassis and model so that if you've got, let's say, multiple awesomes, but you've only got one 8Q, you can know which one is which. You can change it to model number only, so on and so forth. You can play around with this just a little bit and kind of see what you like the most. By default, it's by unit nickname or chassis by default. So if your pilot has a nickname or a call sign, that is what's displayed. Otherwise, it's the chassis. So Jenner, Archer, so on. Okay, so now for a couple of the additional things that we have. Darkening outside the field of view. So I said I would talk a little bit more about this. What this does is it darkens any of the hexes that the targeted or that the selected mech cannot see. So this archer cannot see any of these hexes. So if I'm trying to shoot something that's right here, I shouldn't stand right here because I can't see them. Versus I can shoot something that's here because it's not darkened. Very useful for very quickly determining what you can and cannot do. We'll come back to the ruler line of sight tool in a little bit, probably in another video that will be dedicated almost exclusively to that. Highlighting within field of view. This is one of my favorite options that I said is almost never utilized. So what this does, it looks a little wild, but it highlights everything within your field of view, and it shows different color bands depending on distance. So let's go ahead and play around with this just a little tiny bit. So if we go back to our client options, game board, we can see highlight hexes inside of field of view for selected hex based on distance. Opaqueness of field of view overlay. So what this does is it changes how opaque those colors are that are showed. So as I move this bar, I want you to look over here at those colors. So as I go to the left, they're not really visible. As I go to the right, they become much more noticeable and brighter until finally they completely overpower any information that would otherwise be available on those hexes. Probably don't want to go that far. I normally keep mine around like 50 to 60% or so. Then sizes of discs that are to be highlighted. So how often do you want a new color band to be present? So right now it's set to the default of 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 hexes. You can change this to whatever you want. Maybe you want 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So every 2 hexes, it'll change color. All you have to do is put in those numbers separated by a single space, and it will display them. Darkening hexes outside the field of view, like I said, it just darkens those hexes. By default, it's at about 100 or 75. I find that it's a lot harder to notice that or to see it. So for me, I crank the opaqueness up a lot for those. You can also increase the number of stripes in order to just change how that looks a little. You know, you change it to however you want to look at it. You can also change it to grayscale so it's incredibly obvious which hexes are not able to be seen by whatever unit you have selected. And this information changes based on whatever hex you have selected. So if you have a different hex selected, you have different information that is given to you, which is really nice. You do you. You choose what you want. From there, you can also show spotting field of view, possible moves, and best possible modifiers. So let's start off with possible moves. If you enable this option, you will suddenly have hexes highlighted for where you can move. Anything that's in blue is where you can walk. Anything in yellow is within running range. So you can move and do all of that fun stuff. If you show best possible modifiers, what this does is it gives you information on what kind of a movement modifier you'll have or TMM you'll have based on where you go. So everywhere in here, we get +0 modifiers because we're not going very far. But to here, you get a +1 modifier on your TMM, making it so it's a little harder to hit you. Good information to know. I personally find this a little too busy for my board. And then otherwise, you'll notice as you play that you've got different things that are showed to you throughout different phases. So for example, if somebody's got sensors or anything along those lines, you'll see highlights on the board for how far out those sensors go. Same thing with ECM. Field of fire is during the weapons fire phase, where you can see your forward arc of fire, left or right side arcs, so on and so forth for what you are shooting. That way you can see where you're facing and if you can actually hit a thing. Firing solutions, it tells you what the to hit modifier is for any unit that you're looking at as long as they're within range. And then structural collapse warning. If you are on a map that has structures, then you'll see a little yellow exclamation mark over buildings that if you step on them, they will collapse. I don't recommend stepping on those buildings. Don't do it. It's a trap. All right. That is pretty much all of the different settings that you can possibly change. So why don't we take just a minute to go through all of the settings that I normally do. So right now I'm going to go through all the things that I change from default for how I play on stream. Now, something else you should know is that every time you upgrade your MegaMek version, you will have to manually update the client settings for MegaMek. There is no way to transfer those client settings right now. It's annoying, but you only have to do it every so often. Unless you're crazy like me and you're constantly playing the nightlies, in which case you do it on a daily basis. But neither here nor there. So, things that I change. I go into client settings, main. I unselect this option that says dock on left side of board. So what this does, by default, your unit information will be on the left side of the board. I don't like it being there, so I want it on the right side of the board. Beyond that, I change a couple of the colors so that they can be more viewable on stream, and I don't change anything else within main. The next thing I do is I mute my turn notification. It drives me bonkers, so I don't want to listen to it. Game board. I change a couple of things just to make it more viewable for stream. I turn on highlighting hexes inside the field of view and darkening hexes outside the field of view. And beyond that, I don't do anything else. Then I immediately go to my report and I change the report miscolor to something that's more noticeable. By default, it's just gray. Like it's this kind of a gray right here, which I find very hard to read when I'm playing, and I find myself squinting a lot. So I make it more obvious for the misses. That way I know what's going on. After that, auto display. The player list will auto display in non-report phases, and I just don't want to see it, so I hide it. And then from there, I just make sure I've got my isometric view on. And I turn on the show possible moves. And that's about it. That's all I do. Well, so that is pretty much everything with visually getting set up for your MegaMek game against a bot. I hope that you found this video useful. I hope that you've gotten some good information out of it. We are going to continue this series with some more videos in the future. I don't know what the next one will be, but it'll probably be something like bot commands so that you know how to reload your bot in case you have to save it and come back to your game, as well as how do you end your game depending on if you were victorious or if you were defeated. Anyways, like I said, I hope that you have enjoyed the video. I hope that you found it useful. If you enjoyed the video, please give the video a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, or if you thought there were some pretty big problems, then please leave a comment down below with what you would like to see done differently in the future. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and that little bell right off to the side that says when a new video has been released. And if you're feeling really wily, come over and join us sometime over on twitch.tv//heckendoc for some Let's Play videos of Mech HQ that includes some MegaMek action. That's all I got for you today, and until next time, take care. Happy hunting.